The hunters become. The hunted commander. Zarlak stood tall on the bridge of the Shadow of Conquest, his four arms crossed behind his back as he studied the tactical display. The massive Vorthak battlecruiser cut through space like a predator stalking its prey, its black hull absorbing the light of distant stars. For 3 months, Zarlak and his crew had been hunting in this sector of space, capturing merchant vessels and adding their crews to the slave markets of the inner worlds. The Vorthaks were a warrior race, standing nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous armor plating that served as their skin. Their yellow eyes could see across multiple spectrums, and their 4 arms made them deadly in both combat and ship operations. The Vorthak Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for centuries, taking what they wanted from weaker species and destroying those who resisted. Lieutenant Krex approached the command platform, his movements quick and eager. Like all Vorthaks, he lived for the hunt and the glory that came with conquest. "Commander, we have detected a vessel approximately 2 million kilometers ahead. It appears to be a research ship of unknown origin." Zarlak's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. Research vessels were often the most profitable targets, carrying valuable scientific equipment and information that could be sold to the highest bidder. More importantly, their crews were usually scientists and academics who surrendered quickly rather than risk death. "Show me," Zarlak commanded, moving to the main viewing screen. The detected vessel appeared on the display, and Zarlak studied its design carefully. The ship was sleek and white, about half the size of the Shadow of Conquest, with what appeared to be scientific sensors extending from various points along its hull. Strange markings covered its surface, symbols that looked almost decorative, rather than functional. "Analysis," Zarlak demanded. Krex consulted his instruments with practiced efficiency. "The vessel appears to be conducting some form of deep space research. Power output is minimal, suggesting civilian-grade systems. Hull composition shows standard titanium alloy construction. I detect no weapon signatures, no military-grade shielding, and no escort vessels. Crew complement? Difficult to determine, precisely due to their basic shielding, but estimates suggest no more than 40 beings aboard. The ship's configuration indicates it was built for long-term scientific missions rather than combat." Zarlak's satisfaction grew. 40 scientists would bring excellent prices in the slave markets, especially if they possessed valuable knowledge. The ship itself could be stripped for parts or converted for military use. It was exactly the kind of easy prey they had been hoping to find. "Any distress signals or communications?" Zarlak asked. "Negative, Commander. They appear to be unaware of our presence. Their sensor array seems focused on whatever research they are conducting rather than watching for approaching vessels." This was almost too perfect. A defenseless research ship, completely unaware of the danger approaching from behind. Zarlak had encountered such situations before, but this vessel seemed particularly oblivious to basic security protocols. "Tactical, Officer Vex," Zarlak called to his weapons specialist, a battle-scarred veteran who had served under 3 different commanders. "Prepare boarding torpedoes and slave restraints. We will disable their engines and take the crew alive. Scientists often possess valuable information that increases their market value." Vex's 4 arms moved across his control panel with lethal precision. "Weapon systems charged and ready, Commander. Boarding parties are equipped and standing by. Shall I target their engine compartments?" "Not yet," Zarlak replied, savoring the moment. "First, we will offer them the traditional choice: surrender and live as slaves, or resist and die as heroes. Most choose slavery." The Shadow of Conquest continued its approach, closing the distance with each passing moment. The alien research vessel maintained its course and speed, apparently still unaware that death was approaching from the darkness of space. "Open a communication channel," Zarlak ordered. The main screen flickered, and after a moment, the bridge of the alien vessel appeared. Zarlak found himself looking at beings unlike any he had encountered before. They stood upright on 2 legs like many species, but their skin was smooth and varied in color. They had hair growing from their heads in different styles and colors, and their eyes were small but alert. The being who appeared to be their captain was a female with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes. She wore a uniform that was both practical and somehow elegant, with insignia that Zarlak didn't recognize. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Prometheus. You are approaching our position at high speed. Please state your intentions." Zarlak stepped forward, allowing his full height and intimidating presence to fill the screen. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of countless victories and the promise of swift violence. "I am Commander Zarlak of the Vorthak battlecruiser Shadow of Conquest. Your vessel will prepare to be boarded immediately. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to standard slave protocols. Resist and you will be destroyed where you drift." Captain Rodriguez listened to this threat without any visible sign of fear or concern. Her expression remained calm and professional, as if she were discussing routine ship operations rather than facing certain death or enslavement. "Commander Zarlak," she replied evenly, "you have entered this system without authorization and are threatening a peaceful research vessel. I'm giving you one opportunity to withdraw and continue on your way." Zarlak's mandibles clicked in amusement. The audacity of this small being was almost entertaining. Here she was facing the most feared battlecruiser in 3 sectors, and she was making demands as if she held some position of authority. "You do not understand your situation," Zarlak said, his voice growing colder. "We are the Vorthak Empire. We have conquered dozens of species across the galaxy. Your pitiful research vessel poses no threat to us. You will surrender now, or face the consequences." "I understand the situation perfectly," Captain Rodriguez replied. "The question is whether you do." Before Zarlak could respond to this strange statement, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. Lieutenant Krex spun around from his sensor station, his yellow eyes wide with confusion and growing alarm. "Commander," Krex called out, his voice tight with uncertainty, "I'm getting some very unusual readings from the target vessel." "What kind of readings?" Zarlak demanded, still focused on the communication screen where Captain Rodriguez waited patiently. "Their power signature is changing, rapidly. I'm detecting energy levels that don't match their apparent ship configuration. And Commander, I'm picking up weapon signatures that weren't there before." Zarlak turned away from the screen to look at his sensor displays. What he saw made no sense according to everything he knew about ship design and sensor technology. The research vessel that had appeared defenseless moments before was now showing power readings that rivaled his own battlecruiser. "That's impossible," Zarlak said. "Run the scans again." "I've run them 3 times, Commander. The results are consistent. That ship is not what it appeared to be." On the communication screen, Captain Rodriguez spoke again, her voice still calm, but now carrying an undertone that made Zarlak's chitinous plates prickle with unease. "Commander, you're looking at the UES Prometheus, humanity's most advanced deep space reconnaissance vessel. What you initially detected was our passive scanning configuration. Would you like to see our combat configuration?" Before Zarlak could answer, the human ship began to change. Hull plates that had appeared to be simple white paneling slid aside, to reveal weapon arrays that defied classification. Sensor arrays extended and rotated into positions that spoke of military precision. Most shocking of all, the ship's apparent size increased as hidden sections deployed and locked into combat positions. The sleek research vessel transformed before their eyes into something that looked like it had been designed by Nightmare itself. Weapon systems emerged from concealment with mechanical precision, each one larger and more intimidating than anything in the Vorthak arsenal. "Impossible readings confirmed," Krex reported, his voice now shaking. "Commander, that ship is showing weapon signatures unlike anything in our database. I count at least 27 different weapon systems, and I can't identify what half of them are designed to do." Tactical Officer Vex stared at his displays in complete disbelief. "Commander, their targeting systems have locked onto every critical system on our ship simultaneously. They're showing threat assessments for weapons I've never heard of. Gravitational, pulse cannons, quantum disruption arrays, molecular dissolution beams. What do those weapons do?" Zarlak asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "I have no idea, Commander, But if they can target every system on our ship at once, they can probably destroy us in ways we can't even imagine. Captain Rodriguez spoke again from the communication screen, her voice now carrying the quiet confidence of someone who held all the advantages. Commander Zarlak, humanity has been perfecting the art of warfare for thousands of years. Not against alien species, but against other humans. We've learned to be very, very good at it. The question now is whether you're intelligent enough to learn from this encounter. Zarlak stared at the transformed human vessel, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Ships that disguised themselves as harmless research vessels. Weapons that his computers couldn't even identify. A species that spoke of war as if it were a science they had mastered. "What do you want?" Zarlak asked, the arrogance gone from his voice. "Right now I want to have a conversation," Captain Rodriguez replied. "A conversation about the future of Vorthak expansion in this part of the galaxy, and about what happens when predators meet something higher up the food chain." As if to emphasize her point, one of the human weapons fired a brief pulse that passed harmlessly through the shadow of conquest, but somehow caused every system on the ship to flicker for a moment. The message was clear. They could have destroyed the Vorthak vessel instantly, but chose not to. Zarlak realized that for the first time in his military career, he was no longer the hunter. He had become the prey, and the predator that had found him was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The message that changed everything. The bridge of the shadow of conquest had fallen silent except for the low hum of systems and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment. Every member of Zarlak's crew stared at their displays in shock, trying to understand readings that defied everything they knew about space combat technology. Captain Rodriguez continued speaking from the communication screen, her tone remaining professional despite the overwhelming tactical advantage she now held. "Commander Zarlak, I'm going to demonstrate a few of our capabilities, not to threaten you, but to help you understand what your empire is dealing with. Please observe." On the tactical display, Zarlak watched as one of the human weapon systems activated. The targeting information his computers provided made no sense. According to the readings, the weapon was preparing to fire at a small asteroid approximately 50,000 kilometers away. "Kinetic acceleration system online," Captain Rodriguez announced, as if giving a lecture to students. This particular weapon accelerates tungsten projectiles to approximately 15% of light speed. At that velocity, even a small projectile carries devastating kinetic energy. The weapon fired with no visible energy discharge, no dramatic light show that typically accompanied ship-to-ship combat. There was simply a brief moment of charging, then nothing. But on the tactical display, Zarlak watched the distant asteroid simply cease to exist. One moment it was there, a solid chunk of rock and metal. The next moment it was a rapidly expanding cloud of dust and debris. The projectile was roughly the size of your clenched fist, Captain Rodriguez explained. "We have much larger ammunition available for more significant targets." Lieutenant Krex checked and rechecked his sensor readings, his four hands moving frantically over his control panel. "Commander, the asteroid is gone, completely vaporized. The energy release was equivalent to a tactical nuclear weapon, but there was no explosive signature. It was pure kinetic force." Zarlak felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The Vorthak Empire's most powerful weapons relied on explosive force and energy discharge. The idea of destroying targets through pure kinetic impact was theoretically possible, but practically beyond their engineering capabilities. "Perhaps you'd like to see something more precise," Captain Rodriguez continued. "Observe." Another weapon system came online, this one looking like a collection of crystalline arrays that pulsed with inner light. The targeting system locked onto the shadow of conquest itself, specifically onto one of the external communication dishes. "Molecular targeting laser," Captain Rodriguez announced. "This weapon can selectively break down the molecular bonds of specific materials while leaving surrounding structures completely intact." The weapon fired, and Zarlak watched in amazement as one of his ship's communication dishes simply dissolved. Not destroyed, not blown apart, but dissolved as if it were made of sugar in water. The surrounding hull plating remained completely undamaged. "Communication Array Delta is gone," reported Communications Officer Thek, her voice filled with disbelief. "But there's no damage to the mounting points or surrounding systems. It's as if the dish was simply erased from existence." "That weapon can be scaled up," Captain Rodriguez noted casually. "We could dissolve your entire ship just as easily, but that would defeat the purpose of this demonstration." A third weapon system activated, this one appearing to bend light around itself, in ways that hurt to look at directly. The targeting display showed it was aimed at empty space near the shadow of conquest. "Gravitational Manipulation Array," Captain Rodriguez explained. "This creates localized gravity fields that can be shaped and directed, very useful for a variety of purposes." The weapon fired, and suddenly the shadow of conquest was pulled sideways by an invisible force. Not violently, but with irresistible strength that overcame their inertial dampeners and left the crew grabbing for support as their ship was gently but firmly moved several hundred meters from its original position. "We could just as easily create a gravity field strong enough to crush your ship into a ball of compressed metal," Captain Rodriguez continued. "Or we could generate a localized black hole that would consume your vessel entirely. But again, that's not why we're here." Zarlak found his voice at last, though it came out as little more than a whisper. "What are you?" "We're humans," Captain Rodriguez replied simply. "A species that spent most of its evolutionary history fighting wars against itself. We've had 10,000 years of practice perfecting the art of killing, and we've gotten very, very good at it." She gestured to someone off-screen, and the tactical display updated to show more weapon systems coming online. The list was staggering: plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, quantum disruption fields, temporal displacement weapons, neural scrambling arrays. Each name was more terrifying than the last. "The difference between humans and most other species," Captain Rodriguez continued, "is that we didn't develop these weapons to fight aliens or monsters from space. We developed them to fight other humans." "Do you understand what that means?" Zarlak shook his head, unable to speak. "It means we understand warfare at a level that most species never reach. We know how to be precise, how to be efficient, and how to be absolutely, completely ruthless when the situation requires it." The human captain stood up from her command chair and walked closer to the screen. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "For months, your empire has been attacking human colonies and research stations, taking our people as slaves, destroying our ships, treating us like prey. Today that ends." "We had no idea," Zarlak managed to say. "We didn't know your species was capable of such things." "Now you do," Captain Rodriguez replied. "And now you're going to carry a message back to your empire's leadership. You're going to tell them exactly what you've seen here today." She turned to her tactical officer and spoke clearly enough for Zarlak to hear. "Commander Chen, please inform Admiral Torres that the demonstration is complete. The Vorthak vessel is ready to receive our terms." The human tactical officer nodded and relayed the message. Moments later, a new voice came through the communication system, speaking with the authority of high command. "Commander Zarlak of the Vorthak Empire, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Deep Space Fleet. You are going to return to your home system and deliver a message to your leadership. Are you prepared to listen?" Zarlak nodded, knowing he had no choice but to comply. "The human species is now active in this galaxy," Admiral Chen continued. "We are not conquerors or slavers. We prefer peaceful cooperation with other intelligent species. We have much to offer in terms of technology, knowledge, and trade opportunities." The Admiral paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "However, any species that approaches humanity with thoughts of conquest or enslavement will discover why we are the most dangerous predators that ever evolved on any world in any system. We have turned warfare into a science, and we have been practicing that science for millennia." Captain Rodriguez took over the communication again. "Commander Zarlak, your ship's engines and basic systems are being restored now. You have enough power to return to Vorthak space. but your weapons and advanced sensors will remain offline until you leave this system. True to her word, Zarlak felt his ship coming back to life around him. Essential systems powered up. Life support stabilized, and the engines began their startup sequence. But the weapons remained dead, and their long-range sensors showed nothing but static. "You're letting us go?" Zarlak asked, still unable to believe what was happening. "Dead enemies can't deliver messages," Captain Rodriguez replied. "And we have a very important message for your empire." She walked back to her command chair and sat down, her posture relaxed but alert. "When you return home, you will tell your leaders that humanity is willing to discuss peaceful relations with the Vorthak Empire. We can offer technological exchanges, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. But," her voice grew cold, "if your species continues its aggressive expansion into human space, you will discover what happens when apex predators collide." The communication screen flickered as Captain Rodriguez prepared to close the channel. "You have seen what one human ship can do, Commander. Imagine what 1,000 can do. Imagine what 1,000,000 can do." The screen went dark, leaving Zarlak alone with his thoughts and his terrified crew. In the space of an hour, everything he thought he knew about galactic power structures had been turned upside down. The Vorthak Empire, which had seemed unstoppable in its expansion, had encountered something that made them look like children playing with toys. The journey back to Vorthak Prime took 2 weeks. 2 weeks for Zarlak and his crew to process what they had experienced, to understand the implications of humanity's existence, and to prepare their report for the High Command. When they finally reached the home system, Zarlak found himself standing before the Grand Council of the Vorthak Empire, facing the most powerful beings in their civilization. These were warriors who had conquered star systems, leaders who had never known defeat. "You return with your ship disabled and your crew demoralized," Grand Admiral Vorthak said, his forearms crossed in a gesture of displeasure. "Explain this failure." Zarlak took a deep breath and began his report. He told them about the human research vessel that had transformed into a weapon of unimaginable power. He described technologies that defied understanding and a species that had turned warfare into an art form. He delivered Captain Rodriguez's message word for word, and explained Admiral Chen's terms for peaceful coexistence. When he finished, the council chamber fell silent. The most powerful beings in the Vorthak Empire sat in stunned silence, trying to process the implications of what they had heard. "You are telling us," Grand Admiral Vorthak said slowly, "that there is a species in this galaxy that could destroy our entire fleet with ease." "Yes, Grand Admiral, and they chose not to. Specifically so I could deliver their message." The council members looked at each other, silent communications passing between them through subtle gestures and expressions. Finally, Grand Admiral Vorthak spoke again. "Commander Zarlak, you will prepare a detailed technical report of everything you observed. Every weapon system, every tactical capability, every piece of technology you encountered. Our scientists will analyze this information and advise us on how to proceed." "And the human message?" Zarlak asked. "Will be considered carefully," the Grand Admiral replied. "If this species is as powerful as you claim, then perhaps the age of Vorthak expansion has come to an end. Perhaps it is time to learn the value of diplomacy over conquest." 3 months later, the first Vorthak diplomatic vessel approached human space, broadcasting messages of peaceful intent and requests for formal contact. The age of predator and prey in that sector of the galaxy had ended, replaced by something far more complex and ultimately more hopeful. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the approaching alien vessel from the bridge of the Prometheus, now operating in its true research configuration. The Vorthaks had learned their lesson well, and perhaps the galaxy was becoming a more civilized place. But the human warships remained ready, hidden in the darkness between stars, waiting for the next species that might mistake humanity's desire for peace as a sign of weakness. They would learn, as the Vorthaks had learned, that some predators were better left alone,